Watts. And in this video, we will be going over Dave Filoni and John Favreau's new Star Wars movie. This is nothing new that I've been hearing the past few days, but I just heard about it a few days ago. And it says that Dave Filoni says his Star Wars movie will feature the New Republic. So it'll probably be during the Mandalorian timeline or maybe a few years after. Probably be something they'll work on after the Mandalorian. Like after they finish with all the seasons of the Mandalorian, it's something they might do. Or who knows when this film is going to come out, but it may not be anytime soon, but I'm glad to hear that that Dave Filoni and John Favreau are making a Star Wars movie, and it takes place during the New Republic. And they have a lot more freedom with this because they have a 30-year time gap between The Force Awakens and Return of the Jedi. So, here's a video clip. Let's watch it. This is coming from Collider.
Good, a little jet lag, but all right.
I am very familiar.
Yeah.
A few quick questions. I am curious, what do you think fans will be thinking, or what do you think their reaction is going to be as Episode 8 of The Mandalorian ends, of Season 3?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I have such boring answers sometimes, right? I hope they really enjoy it. I mean, I think they'll have a lot to think about. They'll have a lot to take in, and I think with any good ending, there's the moment you're in it where you're cheering and you feel satisfied, but then there's a little bit after that where you think back at all the things that happened, and maybe you start to put them together in a different way, and you realize it's an ending, but there are other things happening out there in the galaxy that now you know more about, and you might learn a little bit more about this weekend, depending on what panel you go to. So, we'll have to see. But yeah, I just hope, the fans have been so great. You're right, maybe that's not. But the fans have been so great to me and John, and his creation of The Mandalorian is so unique and special. I hope they feel really good about it. I hope they're all cheering and excited for the outcome, whatever that may be.
So I'll admit that I'm so excited about these new movies, but I am a little, and as a fan, I was in the room, I was a little bit confused as to exactly what your movie is.
Yeah.
So what can you tell people about what your movie is?
Very little, of course. Very little. I mean, I think that the way I've been describing it is, I think if you grew up when I did, you're aware of the post-Return of the Jedi era that kind of was presented to me. Like, the New Republic is not a new idea. That's not something Mandalorian created. That's an old idea. It's been around a long time. There are just things in Star Wars that we all seem to know if we've been around it a long time. There have been a lot of tremendous creatives over the years that have been telling stories in the era that, spans the 30 years that now ends up at Force Awakens. But there's a large gap of time there. So there is a story to be told. The New Republic just sit there idly in happy days for all that time, obviously, because things aren't that great when we begin with The Force Awakens. So John and I looked at that time period, and when he knew he wanted The Mandalorian in it, one of the things that I told him early on was, well, I have this epilogue in Star Wars Rebels that's kind of dealing with that time period, which, as you've seen at the end with Sabine and Ahsoka going off. So a lot of those threads start to come together, and then I look at the bigger body of work that's been done and what's relevant, and a story will emerge out of that. So,
can I just ask you, who is writing this? Are you writing the script? Who's doing it?
I'm not going to say much about that, but I will be involved in the writing for sure. Yeah, for sure.
I've heard rumblings that perhaps The Mandalorian Season 4 could be filming later this year. Is that true?
I'm trying to be fair here without giving anything away. I would say, John said he wrote it all. Not my words, his words. So
I'm going to
say in trouble.
I'm going to say that I'm willing to place a large wager it's filming later this year. And would I lose money?
It's interesting, I would say I'm going to say this and feel bad about it, but it's like I would say that's a better wager right now. Maybe on more solid ground than if my Penguins are going to make the playoffs, because we only have 3 games left. We're 1 point behind. We got to win out. That's going to be tough, but I believe in the boys. I think they can get it done, so we'll see. I mean, maybe if the Penguins make the playoffs, my answers will get better. So we all have that to look forward to.
So pretty much pretty much Dave Filoni was talking about him being involved in the writing process, most of the writing process, and claims that John Favreau has wrote it all about this about the Mandalorian at least, and but this is what he said. This is his quote of what he said. Very little. Force Awakens. Yep. So I'm not gonna read all of this, but it's on Collider if you want to check it out on Collider. But this is some new information, and if you want to check out that video on Collider, you might as well too. But Dave Filoni said some very interesting things about their movie that they'd be working on, and I would love to see what they would do. I would love to see their vision, especially Dave Filoni, who was heir apparent to George Lucas. I mean, we're seeing a lot of George Lucas's original ideas evolve within The Mandalorian and with the criminal underworld that's been going on in the small screen. Like, a lot of that stuff that George Lucas had original plans for the sequel trilogy back in the Star Wars archives, where Darth Maul and Darth Maul would become the godfather of crime, and Darth Talon would be Maul's apprentice, and basically there would be these offshoot stormtroopers who become Imperial warlords who start their own planet, and we see the idea of Imperial warlords in playing out on the small screen in The Mandalorian, and Mandalorian, and also the Book of Boba Fett. We're seeing some of that ideas play out, as well as probably in Ahsoka, probably in Skeleton Crew. We're seeing a lot of George Lucas's original ideas from the earlier version of what George Lucas had planned for the sequel trilogy play out in the small screen, like The Mandalorian, and we're also seeing like the idea of Darth Maul becoming the godfather of crime was recycled by George Lucas, and that ended up playing out in the small screen like the Clone Wars and Rebels. He'll probably make an appearance in the Bad Batch at some point. And then they're picking up a story where they're recycling another recycled idea is what they're going to use with the story that takes place 15 years after the events of The Rise of Skywalker, where these gangsters, like, getting the galaxy under control from the gangsters. I think that's going to likely play out 15 years after The Rise of Skywalker, the one where Daisy Ridley is struggling to rebuild the Jedi Order. She'll probably have to accept the fact that it's going to take at least 20 years to grow a new generation of Jedi. I think that's going to play out in the sequel to The Rise of Skywalker. That idea. And I can tell they're picking up ideas from George Lucas's earlier ideas for Star Wars and the sequel trilogy. I've been seeing that play out a lot lately, especially in the Dave Filoni and John Favreau verse. But anyways, that's all I have to say for this video. Do smash a like, subscribe, comment, and I will catch you all later in another video.